The scent of rosemary and garlic filled my kitchen as I stirred the pot, humming along to a soft tune from the radio. The evening light spilled through the window, painting everything gold, the wine glass, the counter, even the steam rising from dinner. When my phone buzzed, I smiled without thinking. Evermark Consulting, Daniel's company. I figured he was calling from the corporate gala he'd been talking about all week. I wiped my hands on a towel, still smiling, completely unaware that in the next minute, my entire world would tilt. "Hi, this is Claire Adams," I answered, cheerful. The woman on the other end had that friendly, professional tone, the kind that sounds harmless. "Good evening, Mrs. Adams," she said. "Just calling to confirm, your husband, Daniel, couldn't make it to the corporate gala this year?" I laughed softly, sure she'd made a mistake. "Oh, he's there," I said. "He left this morning for the event." But the silence that followed was too long, too careful. "That's odd," she said finally. "He was marked absent." The kitchen timer went off behind me, but I didn't move. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, heart hammering. No misunderstanding," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I hung up slowly, staring at nothing. The smell of dinner turned heavy in the air, and all I could think was, if he isn't at the event, then where the hell is he? I stood in the kitchen for what felt like forever, the timer still ringing in the background until it finally stopped on its own. The silence that followed was deafening. My hands trembled as I reached for the wine glass, taking a sip that did nothing to calm the pounding in my chest. Marked absent. Those two words played on a loop in my head, like a cruel echo. Daniel never missed those events. He thrived on them. Networking, impressing clients, showing off the life we'd built together. So why lie? I glanced at the clock, 6:42 p.m. He'd left home that morning in his navy suit, kissed my forehead, told me not to wait up. I remember the smell of his cologne, the sound of his car leaving the driveway. Everything had seemed so ordinary, so rehearsed. But now, even that memory felt staged, a scene from a play I didn't realize I was in. My stomach turned as I imagined him somewhere else, doing God knows what, while I was here cooking dinner for a man who might not even deserve it. I walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, and watched the water run until it went from cold to hot. My reflection in the window looked different, smaller, uncertain. A voice inside me whispered, "Don't jump to conclusions." But another voice, sharper and older, said, "You already know the truth. You just don't want to say it out loud." I dried my hands, grabbed my phone again, and stared at his contact photo. The smile, the eyes I used to trust. I didn't call. I just let the screen go dark. Dinner burned. I didn't even notice until the smell of smoke hit me. I turned off the stove, pushed the pot aside, and just leaned against the counter, trying to breathe. The house felt too quiet, too clean, like a stage after the actors have left. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through our messages. Heart emojis, reminders, inside jokes. It all looked like proof of something real, but now every word felt hollow. How many times had he smiled while lying straight to my face? I walked into the living room, the floorboards creaking under my bare feet. His jacket was still draped over the chair, the one he'd worn yesterday. I reached into the pocket, half expecting to find something, half hoping I wouldn't. Just a receipt, crumpled, from a gas station on the other side of town. It didn't mean much, but it didn't mean nothing either. I folded it back, my hands shaking again. My head felt full of questions I wasn't ready to ask. Not yet. I sat down, staring at the quiet space around me, and for the first time in years, I felt like a stranger in my own home. My mind raced, trying to stitch the pieces together. The missing details, the offhand comments, the late nights. He wasn't at the event. That much I knew. And somewhere inside, beneath the fear and confusion, something colder started to take shape. I didn't have proof yet, but I would. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word of that phone call like a bad song stuck on repeat. By the time my phone lit up with his name, my heart jumped, not from love, but from something colder. I took a breath, forcing a calm into my voice that I didn't feel. "Hey, love," I said softly. "How's the gala?" He sounded relaxed, casual, the hum of laughter and clinking glasses behind him. "Oh, the usual. Speeches, cocktails, boring as always." I smiled into the dark, though no one could see me. "You must be exhausted," I said, keeping my tone light. "Did they serve that terrible buffet again?" He laughed. "You remember? Yeah, same old food." I reached for my phone, my thumb hovering over the record button. Part of me hated the thought of doing it. The other part whispered, "Do it now before he hangs up." So I pressed record, my pulse sinking with every second ticking by. "Take some pictures for me, will you?" I asked sweetly. "I want to see your handsome suit again." He hesitated just a little. "Ah, my phone's almost dead, babe. Maybe later, okay?" Then a click. Silence. I stared at the screen long after the call ended. The noise in the background hadn't been a ballroom. It was too alive, too intimate. Not speeches and polite laughter. It was music, conversation, the clink of wine glasses. And something deep inside me whispered, "He's not where he says he is." I placed the phone face down on the nightstand and just stared at it. The silence that followed felt heavier than the lies he'd just told. My room was dark except for the streetlight filtering through the curtains, cutting pale lines across the bed. I could still hear the echo of his voice, warm, casual, perfectly rehearsed. It was the same tone he used when convincing clients, or when he wanted me not to ask questions. And the worst part? I used to believe it without hesitation. I rolled onto my side, staring at the pillow where he should have been. The fabric still held his scent. That same cologne I used to love, now tainted with doubt. I felt a strange mix of anger and heartbreak fighting for space in my chest. It wasn't just that he lied, it was how easily he did it, how natural it sounded, how little I must have mattered in that moment. I thought of the HR call, of how certain they were that he wasn't there. That certainty burned hotter than any suspicion I'd ever felt. My thoughts spiraled, wild and unrelenting. Was this the first time, or had I been blind for years? Every late meeting, every urgent project, every weekend he said he needed to rest, suddenly felt suspect. I hated myself for wondering, but I couldn't stop. My heart wanted to scream for proof, for clarity. But my mind whispered patience. If he was lying tonight, I'd catch him tomorrow. I just needed to keep calm long enough to see the truth unfold. I lay there for hours, eyes wide open, the darkness pressing against me like a weight. Every sound outside, a car passing, a door closing somewhere, made me think it was him coming home early, ready with another story. But the house stayed quiet, almost too quiet. Around midnight, I got up and walked to the window. The city lights blinked in the distance, indifferent, like they'd seen this all before. Somewhere out there, he was laughing, drinking, pretending. And I was here, rehearsing calm like a woman trying to keep her dignity intact. I made myself a cup of tea even though my hands shook too much to hold the mug steady. The steam fogged my glasses as I stared into it, thinking of how easily love turns into habit, how routine blinds you until something cracks it wide open. I thought about every small lie we tell ourselves to keep the peace. He's just tired. He's just stressed. He loves me. Each one now felt like a thread unraveling from a fabric I'd been proud to wear. I sat at the kitchen table until the sky began to lighten, the first traces of dawn creeping across the floor. My decision wasn't loud or dramatic. It came quietly, like a tide I couldn't stop. I wouldn't confront him yet. Not without proof. If Daniel wanted to play pretend, I could pretend too. I'd smile, I'd listen, I'd take notes. And when the time came, I'd make sure the truth hurt exactly as much as his lies. By morning, my exhaustion had hardened into something else. Focus. I dressed carefully, the way I always did when I visited Daniel's office, but this time it wasn't to bring him lunch or surprise him with coffee. This time I wanted answers. The drive there felt endless, every red light taunting me. When I walked through the glass doors of Evermark Consulting, The familiar scent of polished wood and coffee hit me. The receptionist, a young woman with too bright lipstick, smiled as if everything were perfectly normal. "Oh, Mrs. Adams, haven't seen you in a while," she chirped. I returned the smile, though it felt like my face might crack from holding it. "I just wanted to drop off some documents for Daniel," I said, casual, like my heart wasn't thundering in my chest. "He must be busy after the gala." Her expression faltered for a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. "Gala? Oh, the company dinner? He didn't attend," she said lightly. "I think he mentioned taking some personal days." Personal days. The words hit me like cold water. I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Oh? For what? Do you know?" She lowered her voice a little, glancing around. "Not sure, but I did hear him on the phone last week about a resort booking, I think." I smiled again, polite, sweet, and deadly calm. "Thank you," I said, sliding the papers across the counter. As I walked out of that office, one thought echoed in my head. He didn't just lie to me. He built an entire story and invited me to believe it. I sat in my car outside his office for a long time, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. A resort booking, the receptionist had said so casually, as if it were nothing. My chest tightened, a slow burn spreading from my stomach to my throat. I thought of Daniel's words, the gala, the speeches, the buffet, each one a small, polished lie. My heart wanted to collapse under it, but my mind was already drawing lines, connecting dots he thought I'd never see. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our shared email account. He'd used it for years. Business trips, invoices, hotel confirmations. I searched Silver Dunes Resort, not expecting anything, and still, when the results popped up, I felt my whole body go still. There it was. Booking confirmation. Silver Dunes Resort. Weekend package for 2. My breath caught. 2. My name was even listed as the guest. He'd used my name, like some shield, as if pretending I was there would make the lie cleaner. My hands trembled as I took a screenshot. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. But the realization hurt worse than the evidence itself. This wasn't a careless mistake. This was planned, rehearsed. He'd thought of every detail except the one thing he couldn't control, me picking up that call. I closed my eyes for a moment, forcing myself to breathe. I wouldn't cry. Not yet. He wanted a performance. Fine, I'd give him one. But the ending would belong entirely to me. I drove straight to the travel agency listed on the receipt, my fingers tapping against the steering wheel the entire way. The office was small and tidy, the kind of place that smelled faintly of paper and perfume. A young woman behind the counter smiled when I walked in. "Hi there, how can I help you today?" she asked. I smiled back, calm, steady. "Yes," I said softly. "I'm calling to confirm a reservation made under Daniel Adams." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Of course, one moment." My pulse pounded with every click of her mouse. "Yes, we have it here," she said brightly. "Weekend package for 2 at the Silver Dunes Resort." My throat went dry. 2? I asked, even though I already knew. "Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Adams," she replied without hesitation. I felt something inside me go completely still. Not rage, not grief, just silence. "Thank you," I said, slipping a practiced smile onto my face as I turned away. I walked out of the building like a ghost, my heels clicking against the floor in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. Outside, the sun was blinding. The world kept spinning as if nothing had changed. Cars honking, people laughing, life carrying on. But inside me, everything had shifted. He hadn't just betrayed me, he'd impersonated me to do it. And in that moment, the ache of betrayal began to harden into something sharper. I didn't know exactly what I would do yet, but I knew this. I wouldn't confront him with tears. I'd confront him with consequences. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't even cry. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. The click of each key felt deliberate, final. I searched for a private investigator, someone discreet, efficient. If Daniel thought he could choreograph this lie perfectly, I'd make sure the ending didn't belong to him. The man I hired didn't ask questions. He just nodded when I handed him the name, the date, and the resort. When I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time in days, I felt in control. That weekend stretched on forever. Every hour felt like its own test, part anticipation, part quiet rage. I cooked, cleaned, went through the motions like any other wife waiting for her husband to return. Except this time, I wasn't waiting for love. I was waiting for evidence. When the email finally arrived, subject, photos attached, I just stared at it for a moment, heart steady. I opened the file and there he was. Daniel, my husband, arm around a woman I'd seen once at a company dinner. Hannah. They looked happy. Champagne, sunset, smiles that belonged to strangers. I zoomed in, studying the details like clues from a crime scene. His hand on her waist, her head tilted toward him, his wedding ring still shining on his finger. For a second, my stomach clenched so hard I thought I'd be sick. But then, something inside me shifted. He wasn't untouchable anymore. The man who'd built a lie so carefully had just handed me the proof to destroy it. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and whispered to myself, "Game over, Daniel." When he finally walked through the door that Sunday evening, I was already seated at the dining table. Dinner was set, candles flickered, and 2 glasses of wine waited between us. I'd made his favorite meal, not out of love, but out of irony. He loosened his tie, smiling like a man with no secrets. "How was the corporate gala?" I asked, my voice smooth, casual. He chuckled, rolling his shoulders. "Tiring, but fine. You'd have hated it." I swirled my wine slowly, meeting his eyes. "Oh, I don't know," I said softly. "I might have enjoyed Silver Dunes Resort better." The color drained from his face so fast it almost fascinated me. "What did you just say?" His voice cracked slightly, just enough to betray the panic. I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Silver Dunes," I repeated. "You know, the resort that had a lovely weekend booking for Mr. and Mrs. Adams." His mouth opened, closed, opened again, like a man gasping for air underwater. "It's not what it looks like," he began, but I cut him off. "Oh, don't insult me with that line," I said, my tone colder now, sharper. "The photos, Daniel, the champagne, the woman with the red dress and no conscience, explain it." He stuttered, his excuses collapsing faster than he could build them. I stood, resting my hand on the table between us. "You were absent from the gala," I said quietly. "But don't worry, I'll make sure everyone remembers where you really were." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. He tried to speak again, but the words tangled somewhere between guilt and fear. "Claire, please," he stammered, stepping closer. "It's not serious. It just happened." I almost laughed, the kind of laugh that doesn't sound human anymore. "It just happened," I repeated. "You planned a weekend. You falsified expense reports. You used my name. You didn't trip and fall into betrayal, Daniel. You packed for it." His shoulders slumped, his charm evaporating under the weight of the truth. For the first time, I saw him clearly. Small, cowardly, ordinary. He reached for me, maybe hoping for pity, but I stepped back. "You know what's funny?" I said quietly. "You've spent years managing crises for clients, but you never learned how to handle one at home." He blinked, confused. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Don't worry," I added. "By Monday morning, you won't have to explain yourself to me. You'll have an entire boardroom waiting for your version of the truth." His face went pale, realizing too late that this wasn't an argument. It was the prelude to his ruin. I picked up my wine glass, savoring the quiet. "You've always loved control, Daniel," I said softly. "Consider this your exit interview." Then I turned, leaving him standing in that perfect, silent house, the one I'd built, the one he'd poisoned. As I walked down the hall, I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Just steady. The kind of steady that comes right before the final act. The truth was out, but justice, that was still mine to deliver. By Monday morning, I was already awake before sunrise. The house still smelled faintly of last night's confrontation. Candle wax, red wine, and something broken in the air. Daniel slept in the guest room, or at least pretended to. I didn't check. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and drafted an email. No anger, no accusations, just attachments, the photos from Silver Dunes, the receipt, the falsified expense report labeled corporate event, and a short note. I believe you should be aware of this discrepancy. I read it twice, calm and detached, before clicking send. By noon, the call came from his company. I didn't answer, but I could imagine it. HR, compliance, whispers traveling through hallways like wildfire. The same woman who'd phoned me days earlier now held the truth in her inbox. I pictured her face as she opened those files, as pieces of Daniel's carefully curated image fell apart one by one. I didn't need to witness the chaos. I just needed to know it was happening, and when his message finally appeared on my phone, "We need to talk," I smiled, deleted it, and took another sip of coffee. Hours later, the storm hit. His name trending on internal chat boards, his project suspended, whispers of unethical conduct. I didn't celebrate. Revenge isn't fireworks. It's the quiet satisfaction of balance being restored. He'd gambled everything on deceit, and I'd simply turned the cards over. When he walked through the front door that evening, his expression told me everything. He looked smaller somehow, stripped of the confidence he wore like armor. And I was done pretending. He slammed the door so hard the frame shuddered. "How could you do this to me?" he shouted, voice raw with disbelief, not remorse. I didn't even flinch. I just set my cup down, watching him unravel. His tie was gone, his shirt half untucked, the perfect picture of a man whose lies finally ran out of breath. "You mean telling the truth?" I asked quietly. His eyes flashed with fury. "You've ruined my career, Claire." The irony almost made me laugh. "No, Daniel," I said, leaning back against the counter. "You did that when you turned honesty into a hobby you could quit whenever it got inconvenient." He paced the room, muttering curses under his breath, the kind of tantrum that would have once scared me into silence. Not this time. Every word he threw felt smaller, weaker. "Do you have any idea what this means for me?" he barked. I tilted my head. "Do you have any idea what this meant for me?" My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The calmness in it did more damage than shouting ever could. He stopped pacing then, realizing he wasn't arguing with his wife anymore. He was facing the woman who'd seen through him completely. I walked to the table, picked up a sealed envelope, and placed it in front of him. His name printed neatly in bold letters. "What's this?" he asked, though his voice had lost all the sharpness from before. "Divorce papers," I said softly, effective immediately. He blinked, stunned, like the concept of consequence had never applied to him before. "You can keep the house for now," I added. "It's too full of ghosts for me anyway." I turned away as he opened the envelope, letting him read the terms I'd already memorized by heart. This time, he was the one standing in silence. He stood there, staring at the papers as if they might rearrange themselves into something less final. "You're just walking away?" he asked, voice trembling with disbelief. I looked at him, really looked, and realized there was nothing left to save. The man in front of me wasn't my husband anymore. He was just the consequence of his own choices. "No," I said gently. "I'm not walking away. I'm reclaiming what you tried to bury." His eyes searched mine, desperate for a softness that wasn't there anymore. I gave him none. "You always thought you were the story, Daniel. Turns out you were just a chapter." I walked to the doorway, picking up my coat from the rack. The house looked different now, stripped of illusion, stripped of warmth. The framed photos on the wall felt like props from someone else's life. "Where will you go?" he asked, his voice smaller now. "Somewhere you're not," I said without turning around. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it quietly, letting that silence speak louder than any final word could. As I stepped into the cool evening air, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 tiny promises waiting to be kept. The ache in my chest didn't disappear. It transformed, becoming something stronger, something clean. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it exhales. And as I walked down the street, divorce papers filed, lies exposed, and dignity intact, I knew this wasn't an ending. It was the prelude to the life I should have been living all along. Months later, I sat at my new desk, sunlight spilling through the tall windows of the HR department where I now worked. Funny, isn't it? The same kind of call that shattered me became the one I now answer for others, calmly, professionally, without a tremor in my voice. Life has a cruel sense of symmetry, but sometimes it's poetic. My boss congratulated me that afternoon on a project well done, and I smiled, a genuine one this time. No pretending, no masking, just peace. After work, I met a friend for dinner at a rooftop restaurant. The city below glittered, alive and untamed, and for once, I didn't feel like a spectator. "You look happier than I've seen you in years," she said, tilting her glass toward me. I laughed softly. "That's because I stopped waiting for invitations to someone else's events," I told her. "I started hosting my own." The words tasted good, real. They weren't rehearsed or defensive. They were mine. Every syllable felt like a step farther from who I used to be. As the night stretched on, I looked out over the skyline, the breeze warm against my skin. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably rewriting his version of the story, but it didn't matter anymore. I'd already written the ending. I raised my glass, smiling to myself. He faked an invitation to a life I thought we shared. So I RSVP'd to Freedom, and didn't save him a seat.